Welcome to the Fuel, Move, Recover podcast. This show is a complement to the content found at advancingathletics.com. We welcome you into the FMR family, but remember the topics we discuss are not clinical recommendations or medical advice. Hey folks, Michele here. I just wanted to let you know that I will be on vacation next week, and although we are committed to our weekly posting schedule, next week's episode may or may not be a little bit late. We are working to keep our same recording schedule as usual, and if my internet connection is sufficient, then I will be able to post the episode as usual on Friday at noontime. But if for whatever the reason the connection is unstable while I am away, then we will record when I return next weekend, and then it'll be posted by Sunday. So I hope that you enjoy this episode, and either way, you'll hear from us again for episode 4 by the end of next weekend. Thanks for your patience, and as always, we're happy to have any feedback that you might have for us. Enjoy the show. Howdy, everyone. Welcome to the Fuel, Move, Recover podcast. This is episode 3 and recording during Recovery Week. My name is Michele Iono, and I'm joined by my teammates, Alex Uding.
Hey there.
And Lindsay Malone.
Hello.
So as you all know, that this podcast is that this and everything that we do is funded by our members at Advancing Athletics. So we are very grateful for their patronage. And as you are starting to see or hear, I guess, since you aren't watching this, but since you're starting to notice that we have our patrons and they're able to be incorporated into the show. So if that's something you're interested in, you can always check out what we have to offer or just enjoy this podcast. Either way. So regardless, if you're a member or a listener, we feel deeply about you guys being a part of our family. So let's go around the room and see how everybody's day is going. So Alex?
My day's been good. Not feeling the greatest, so kind of kept it low key. Today did a little bit of work, did a strength workout this afternoon, and just kind of let myself recover a little bit. Just like a whole body circuit, kind of short and sweet. Just needed more of a light day than anything else. Yeah. So yeah, that's about it. It was very low key. How about you, Lynn?
Yeah, I mean, the day was a lot of running around, but the highlight, I took my kids to the pool, so that was nice. It's been like really mild, nice weather. So no workout, always a bummer. Maybe I'll get a little one in later, but otherwise, yeah, pretty good day.
Good.
Michele, how about you?
My day is good. We are leaving for vacation for the Outer Banks next week. So it's like kind of frantic getting everything packed up and ready to go and recording and all my work and stuff like that. So was able to keep the streak alive. So I ran today at lunch, and I got to do my first barefoot run in a long time because I like to go on the turf, and I do it with my friend Abby, and we were able to utilize the football stadium. And it's just something so refreshing about doing some barefoot running. So, but because that was the first run I did in a while today, I kind of took it easy with my run. So
what's the streak at? What's the number?
Let's see, 63, 64, 65.
Wow, that's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm also probably, I think I'm down. I've lost like 35 pounds since New Year's Day. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. So So thanks. And I this has been a really good opportunity, us doing this. Uh, it's given me an opportunity to practice what I preach, or I guess that's kind of cliche, but it's just to learn how some of this stuff can be implemented into a routine or whatnot.
Yeah, sometimes it's just like I think sometimes we're so in the thick of things that we forget to take care of the little pieces as well. And everything we say is just as applicable to our own lives. And it is good to have that awareness and really kind of practice. And then it lets us connect with our viewers, and they're going to have ideas that maybe things they've tried, and then vice versa, things that we're trying that we know are being effective for us might be effective for somebody else. And everyone's in it together. There's something,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we'll talk about this a lot today. Like, there are things in our lives that we have control over and things that we don't, and it's learning to navigate them. And we're all in it together, learning how to kind of thrive. And so learning from each other's experiences is super beneficial.
Well, I feel like once you get in the running routine or workout routine, it's like it takes more effort to not do it, right? It's like you're in forward motion. So it's like, oh, it's part of your routine and it's just like, it's part of your day then.
Well, it's kind of like that book that we've all read parts of, that Start Finishing book by Charlie Gilkey, which is just fantastic. I really recommend it to anybody. But one of the big take home messages that I tell myself is that you have to have the courage to have boundaries when it comes to your schedule, or we we're supposed to apply boundaries to every aspect of our lives, and our schedule should be included in that. So, if you need to get started at a certain time, and that will allow you to stay on track as the day progresses so that the day doesn't get away from you. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I don't have the time to do whatever either healthy releases or whatever other activities that you want to do. It allows you to make sure that you fit those things in, but you have to be courageous and make sure you actually stick to that. So,
Well, and it's not, I mean, the way that our culture is like setting time boundaries is not
mm-hmm,
typically acceptable.
mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
For
for sure.
work or whatever. I mean, it's like if you're I think people sometimes think or associate taking care of yourself with maybe being lazy, like you're not
Mm-hmm.
working enough or you're not, you know, going after, other things like money or possessions or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, or like weakness, it's like,
Right.
oh, well, you need to sleep, it's like, what's
Yeah.
wrong? It's like, well, I can go on 2.5 hours of sleep for a month and a half. So it's like that's great, but at the same time, you're, like Alex said, like, odds are you're not thriving, you know, if you're having to exist like that. And it's like, it's okay to admit that, like, man, I'm just not happy, or I just don't feel good. And then, because you can fix that, you can have both. You can work really hard and also like not be miserable, I think.
Yeah, for sure. There's a balance.
For sure. So with all this serious talk, well, it's also, anybody drinking anything? Alex, I saw you sipping on something.
Yeah, I'm drinking kombucha tonight. Raspberry ginger.
What is it?
Raspberry ginger.
That sounds yummy.
Yeah.
Now, the alcohol content of kombucha goes up the longer it ferments. Did you guys know this? So it
Mm-mm.
becomes like less sweet and more. So there's some like I don't know what brand you're drinking, but what's the one like Synergy? I can't think of the name of the
Yeah.
brand. Do you know what I'm thinking of?
Yeah.
It
I
is.
think
Maybe
it's
Synergy
energy.
is the brand. Yeah, they have some that are sold in the like alcoholic beverage section because they ferment longer.
Yeah, I think all of them have to come with the label too, like
Yeah. They're
operating a vehicle.
yeah, they're lower. So
Yeah.
I'm drinking something kind of cool called Nanny State. And this is a near beer. So it's probably about the same alcohol content as the kombucha, maybe a little bit more. It's like 0.5% of alcohol. But I got it for a friend who we had some friends over, and the one is um, expecting, so she can't drink. And I bought it thinking it was like an NA, like a true no alcohol beer, but it's not. It has 0.5%. Anyway, it's actually pretty good. It's a good weeknight beer if you're not really feeling it, but it actually tastes good. So BrewDog, cheers to you. Good job
Yeah.
on this. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking a Hefeweizen. I just love wheat beers, all different kinds of wheat beers. And this one's from R Shea in Akron. And this is the first time I have this beer battered fish recipe that uses a wheat beer, and so I got the Hefeweizen just for that. And then when I actually drank it, rather than just putting it in my batter, I was like, "Oh my god, this is really freaking good." Yeah, so I've been going around to like all the local stores trying to find, like, just try to buy as much of this as I can. So trying to find it. So with that being said, now that we got the important stuff out of the way, so we can talk about the article for this week. So as I mentioned at the top, it's Recover Week. So that means that the article that we posted on advancedathletics.com in our Fuel Move Recover blog is centered on recovery. So I wrote this article, so I will start to give you a rundown of it, and we'll weave the questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from our patrons. We are weaving those into the talk, so you'll hear a little bit of a different format this week than what you heard last week. So, premise of the talk is to give you a better idea of how you should interact with and hold a relationship with stress. So at some point in time, stress became a negative thing. And if you guys have, the listeners, that is, if you've listened to the previous episodes, you know that I kind of banged the drum of how stress has such a bad reputation and that we are feverishly trying to break here at Fuel Move Recover. So essentially, it's just like to draw tight. I mean, from the literal translation. So if you start to think about that, you can start to take the power away from the word, and it allows you to just start to think about it's just taking energy away from you, or it's stressing you in that way. So one of the analogies, I use a couple different analogies. One of them is like a tug of rope, tug. How do you say it?
Tug of war?
Tug of war. What I say? Tug of rope? Yeah. Well, I mean, tug of rope. So with it, it's your, if you think about it, if we use that as our analogy, then you can more easily visualize how, if you have a group of kindergartners versus a group of NFL players, and how much stress that'll be. And then you can apply that to different activities that you have. And then that way it just gives you an idea of how you're putting strain on your system rather than just stress being something that you want to avoid like the plague. So obviously you don't want too much stress, because even in our analogy, then you can still damage the rope, so to speak, if the rope is your physiology or your mental well-being or whatnot. So, because the reason why we're going to continue to beat this drum and we're not going to let go of it, and you're going to continue to hear us talk about it, is because your ability to identify properly how stressed you are, or how your body is responding to stress, is the important thing to keep you healthy or to keep making progress. It's kind of like what Alex just said, right? So she said that she's not feeling the best today. So she made the decision to do a lighter workout. She still did something. She felt okay with doing something, but she made the decision to not go too hard. Whether or not she made the right whether or not that was overly conservative, or maybe it was liberal, like maybe she'll wake up feeling worse tomorrow, or maybe she'll wake up feeling better tomorrow. That's something that she has to experiment with and figure out like over time. So, like that's just a really good point, Alex. Can you just tell us like how you felt when your workout? Like, can you kind of elaborate?
Yeah, I think kind of what Lindsay talked about at the beginning is like when we develop our habits and we have these certain streaks and things that we've developed into our routine, it does feel good to accomplish them. And so for me, working out is one of those things where it's like I've learned to incorporate it into my day. I feel better after I do it. I usually sleep better if I've worked out that day. And so, kind of in scanning my body during the day and just kind of seeing like what's my energy level like, taking the time to just be in the moment and not pay attention to what's going on around me, but just kind of breathing in, breathing out, kind of seeing like, are my legs sore, are my arms sore, like what am I feeling? Just kind of let me know, like, okay, what do I want to incorporate into my workout routine? I'm not feeling like I want a high energy, high stress, using the word stress because a workout is stressing the body to improve the body. So it's a good thing, but I wanted to change the kind of stress I was providing it. And so I wanted to go a little bit lighter, a little bit more intentional. So I targeted the muscles I wanted to target. I did feel better afterwards doing it. But I think it's kind of, I've learned through that experience of building my relationship with working out that sometimes it's just like, you can change your routine. Was today supposed to be a run day? Yes. But it was like, that's not what my body needed today. And so to manage how I felt the rest of the day and the rest of my stress, I had to listen to what it was telling me, break my routine a little bit, but still give myself a semblance of a routine I'm familiar with because it's what I needed for today. And I think I feel better because of it.
Yeah, and so I think it's like giving yourself that opportunity to modify your routine. And so you're still making progress with your routine, even though you had to change it for today. So it's the same thing that I talk about later on. It's just at the end of the article, it's like have a routine, but don't be married to it. Like it's okay if you have to change it or whatnot. You want to be anti-fragile, right? So what that means is so things that are fragile when stuff changes. So the word people use most of the time is resilient or resilience. So when you think about something that's resilient, it is not harmed by change or disruption. But if it's just sturdy, that also means that disruption and change also it does not benefit something that is resilient. So does not exactly encompass everything that we're trying to invoke in improvement in performance. So instead, a concept like anti-fragile was laid out by Nicholas Tassim, I think is how you say his last name. The book is Anti-Fragile, and essentially it's that like our skeletal muscles are anti-fragile. So by working out with one weight, the next time you come back to do that same weight, your body will actually be more capable of it, right? So I don't know where I was going with this, but it took me too long to get to my point. So
But yeah, I think like being flexible, you don't want the routine to be a stress itself.
Yeah.
So like I think with all of the topics that we talk about, you know, we're you're always wanting to make progress, but if you're trying to be perfect and make everything exactly right all the time and you're in this routine, that becomes a stress too. So I think it's great to be able to modify, based on how you're feeling, have a little bit of stress because I think the other tendency of people is to say like I'm not feeling good or whatever, so nothing. I'm doing nothing,
mm-hmm,
and you don't have to
mm-hmm,
go that route. Like you can, you know, try and match the amount of stress with the type of, day that
yeah.
you're having.
Yeah. So, and that's like one of the things that I mentioned in the article is talking about stress is like putting gas in your car, and you don't get all upset that you have to fill up your gas tank. Like the fact, it might be kind of annoying that you have to stop and like how much it costs and whatever, but the fact that it uses the gas, is like you just accept it. So if you can just start to accept that stress is a part of the process of betterment or accomplishment, then it takes the power away from it. And then you can just start to move forward without having to always worry about, like, not walk on eggshells because you're worried about getting stressed, because now you're not, quote unquote, like afraid of that word anymore. So, excuse me. So we've started to talk already about some of the different variations of stress. And so, like Alex, she's feeling, because she's not feeling well. Sorry, Alex, you're becoming the poster child for this episode.
Oh, no.
So that's how good of a teammate she is. She's just willing to, be the example for today. And because of the fact that she's not feeling well, her working out too hard would probably end up being in bad stress. But she knew that working out just doing something would still have a good stress effect. So it's just kind of like what we were talking about with the working out. Most people are aware, no matter what your fitness routine is, most people are aware of the phrase use it or lose it. And so that the point is that the body craves stress. And so if you aren't continuously doing something to kind of challenge your body, even if it's in a small way, then you start to kind of lose some of what you had built, whether you had built it intentionally or unintentionally. So that's why we're super fussy with you guys about not allowing your activities or your games like be the only version of good stress you have. So imagine like athletes, if the only time they ever worked out was during the games. So that's a pretty easy thing to envision. Whereas a lot of us that have physical jobs, or a lot of folks that have physical jobs, the only physical activity they get is their physical job. Well, it's the same thing. Their body never gets a chance to adapt beyond that. It's always stressed right to the brink.
Yeah, and you're sort of like picking your discomfort, right? Like your discomfort a little bit now so that you're better later. I think you mentioned that in your article. It's like, okay, so do I want to like deal with this little bit of physical discomfort, mental discomfort, whatever, to get on the other side and be prepared for, whatever, work, the game, the match, whatever.
So you bring up a good point, Lindsay, and that brings us to our first comment from Gabby R. And remember, you can also write in comments if you sign up over at advancingathletics.com. So Gabby says, I really like your analogy relating stress to the tank of gas in your car. It makes a lot of sense. When I think about it in that way, I'm the type of person that waits until my stress tank is running on fumes before deciding to fill it back up. Do you have any recommendations for identifying when the tank is quote unquote half full instead of waiting until it's on E? So my initial thought is that with this is that you may not be as in tuned with, you either have incredible discipline in that you're able to just blow right past all of the signals that your body gives you about the fact you're starting to lose your energy level and your stress tank is starting to empty out, or if it's either that, the really high discipline, or you just aren't in tune with that aspect. That would be my first thought, because it's like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I said that last week too, I think. And if you were able to recognize where your level was, how full your tank was, then you'd be able to act quickly and easily and not get totally stressed out and wait until it all the way empties out.
Yeah, I think part of it's learning how to read your interpretation of situations and what is a positive stressor for you or motivator for you and what might be a negative stressor for you. And so, like, looking, if it's not obvious for you, maybe similar to what we discussed last week, you just bring awareness to just, do you feel tense somewhere? And then can you let that tension go? And if you were tense somewhere in a certain situation, where are you? Like, what are you doing at that time that suddenly you're really squeezing your legs together, or your shoulders are like to your ears, or you're death gripping something? Like, what's the situation you're in where suddenly you're aware that you're reacting in some capacity, even though you may not be doing it on purpose, or intentionally? So I think having those moments where you just kind of, like I've said, I like to body scan, where I'm just like, it's calm for a moment, and I'm just like aware that I'm in a funk or I'm super focused on something, and I just separate myself, and it just brings me back to a moment. So maybe you do that. Just kind of note what you're feeling, what you're smelling, what you're seeing. Like, if any of that's eliciting a negative response to you, like, maybe then that's how you identify a stressor. And it's like, can I change my interpretation to that? Do I need to be stressed out by that? Do I need to be stressed by the guy in front of me who's driving like a jerk? Or can I just let it go, take a few deep breaths, and then suddenly, okay, me holding my like shoulders really tight, I can relax out of that. I no longer have neck pain. Maybe I'm more motivated to work out. Maybe it's like little things like that we just don't realize. Or if it's meal prep is the thing that stresses you out, or like you feel like you don't have time to cook. And Lizzie's going to have like way better examples than that than me. Like, if maybe it's around the kitchen that stresses you out, and you know you should be eating healthy, or you don't have a lot of time, so you're making certain decisions, you're where you want to do it better. Maybe that's where you start to address it. Like, identify the things that you have an emotional response over, and maybe that's the place to start.
Yeah, and I think always seems to be an element of time wrapped into being stressed, right? Like, I don't have enough time. I have all these things. And I think even just getting clear on how you're spending your time. And so, like, if it is meal prep or working out, like, getting organized about it and kind of saying, like, where do I want to be at the end of the week, and working backwards and actually blocking out the time. And this also goes back to that book, Start Finishing, because it talks about how everything is like a project, but we don't think about it that way. So, like, if you want to run every day, then, like, where's that run going to go? And that could be stressful because you feel like, oh, I want to do this or I want to work out, but I don't have the time. Well, you have to actually, like, make it a priority and put it on your calendar. So I think that can also help with stress. And if some of the things that you enjoy are going to the wayside, like, if normally you like to read a book, like, for enjoyment, not just, just for, like, when you're going to bed or something, and that you notice you're not doing that because you're filling that time up with something else, or you're skipping your workouts or whatever, like, those are the sorts of things that could be red flags that say, like, you know, I need to refocus, and maybe some things need to get off my plate so I'm not having this half full feeling or feeling.
I
And
totally.
I think to tie a bow on this, probably what I would recommend, the first thing is to start to make time, start to build, even if it's small chunks of time, 10, 15 minutes of, whenever you feel, is it like, for example, on Fridays that you're crashing? Well, maybe during the week, try to start making some time for yourself, even if it's just a few minutes, because by doing that, you'll start to see what your schedule looks like. And then that might give you some insight into the difference between, does my schedule look like this because it has to, or does my schedule look like this because it just happened to land like this? And now I actually have an opportunity to impact some change or influence how my schedule works. So then moving on through the article, we kind of talk about, or I wrote about bad stress. And just talking, the example I use here is the whole born to run concept that was laid out in a book a few years ago. And essentially, what it boils down to is the difference between being born to run versus living to run. So our body might be built for that, but it's if you aren't doing things throughout your day that replicate that allow you to successfully run, then the odds of you being able to go out and have a consistent routine or for it to feel good, like good stress, is really slim. That risk ratio really skyrockets. So it's just about starting to learn those limits, and a little bit of it is experimentation. Like if this is something new or something you haven't done in a really long time, then it'll take time to do that. And realizing that you can take something that's good stress and turn it into bad stress. So I think I mentioned in the article, well, I know I mentioned in the article things about like breaching doors or chasing after somebody or carrying somebody away from danger. Like those are just occupational hazards for being a first responder. But then you want to go do your workout afterwards and you just are feeling like you've been, you know, really worn down and beat down. And so maybe the best decision for that individual is not to work out, to go home and just get sleep and to just kind of de-stress, especially because if you had these stressful activities in your day, odds are there are also mental effects to that as well. So processing that, or maybe your release for the negative mental stress is a positive physical stress, which is the workout, then like Alex did today, you really need to be, you really need to be mindful about how you go about that and how you do that. So, which that brings us to our next comment. And this comes from Curtis B. And he says, "This could not have come at a better time in my life. I have lots of what I feel to be negative stressors in my life. I don't think I realized how much this has impacted my well being. Trying to turn negative stress into good stress is difficult. I find myself comfort eating and not exercising to cope with the negative stress. How can I change these habits? I know eating unhealthy and not exercising is making it worse. I need more motivation." So I think maybe we can try to offer some guidance for Curtis here. And so maybe let's try, how does somebody, so I think maybe Lindsay, we can start with the comfort eating. And my thought is that separating those two words, right? So people find comfort in eating versus just simply choosing to eat comfort food.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things wrapped up in comfort eating or eating for comfort, right? So, one is, sort of foods that we ate growing up or foods associated with memories. And that is like, it's an actual component of why we enjoy food. There's another scientific part that's actually pretty interesting with gluten and dairy specifically. There are proteins in each of those that can cause some people's brains to produce morphine like compounds that help them relax. So think about like comfort foods traditionally are like pizza, grilled cheese, lasagna. Think about it, gluten and dairy. So, in some people, it's more than others. So, some people produce more of these compounds than other people. So, they might have more of a tendency to comfort eat. Um, and then I think the other issue here is just how our environment is set up, right? I mean, food is all around. You can't almost do anything without being offered a snack, right? Or something. So I think the first part of this is setting up your environment. If you know that that's your tendency, is setting up your environment to make it physically difficult to comfort eat. Like put the stuff away or don't buy the stuff that is going to be um, difficult to resist in those settings. Most people aren't comfort eating like carrot sticks and apples, right? So if that's what you have around, you may not choose to do that. And then replacing it with something that is something that helps with stress management. So something that you enjoy. So for a lot of people I suggest like puzzles or something that kind of involves your mind just enough to help you like relax and concentrate on something different, or watching a show that you find really interesting. um, Finding something that will help you relax, sort of turn off the part of the nervous system that is associated with stress. So um, knitting may not be the best example here, but knitting does help people relax. So, or, I'm trying to think of some other things, yard work or house projects, something that just involves your mind just enough to take it off of something else, but it's not so difficult that it's making you more stressed.
Yeah, I think those are great recommendations. And I agree with kind of changing the environment, setting your environment up for success as well. I think from a fitness standpoint, that can be very true too. Like if your sneakers are in the closet, it's easier to ignore them, right? Whereas if you put them next to the TV, they're looking at you, right? Or a foam roller or some weights. Like you can set it up that you have a reminder, or you always set a certain timer to go off. That when that timer goes off, you're going to do 10 squats. And you just incorporate it into your routine. Like you said, Michaela, like you're now on a 65-day running streak. Day one of that 65 days does not look like the workout you are doing right now. And it's not setting the standard that you have to have this perfect routine like we've mentioned. You just have to start. And once you start, that's how you build the momentum. So don't look for, I know I should be doing this workout routine. It should look like this. You get in shape by doing these things. It's like maybe that's just not where you're at, and that's okay. And it's just starting somewhere. So if this person is having a hard time um, doing the things that he knows that he wants to do, well, maybe we don't set the expectation to look like something he thinks he should be doing, because he's going to feel inadequate if he thinks he should be doing that and he's not doing that. It feeds into that psyche of like, well, why even bother? Why get started? I'm not going to be doing that certain thing that I know I should be doing. Well, let's just make it look completely different. What if the way we have you move isn't something you've done before, and we incorporated different ways into your day where suddenly it's like I didn't even realize I was working out, but I was just accumulating movement and tasks like yard work. Like a lot of household movements can be very active and very energy intensive, and we just don't think about it that way. And so maybe your starting point is doing something like that, or breaking it up into 2-minute increments of just moving for 2 minutes. We can all waste time scrolling through a phone for 2 minutes, and just looking at it that way. And I think once you start doing it, it becomes this thing that suddenly had power over you, and you have power over it, because it's like, yeah, now it's part of my routine. I'm choosing to do it. It's getting bigger and better, and then you've got that momentum to feel good about it, and suddenly it's hopefully a positive motivator. The stress is a motivator and not a negative emotion.
Yeah, and I think like awareness, like you mentioned, like bringing awareness like to your body, and I think in this situation too, bringing some awareness, like if your job is project based, or and that's when the negative stress happens, or is it always 3 o'clock in the afternoon or in the evening when you're doing like the stress eating, or your workout goes out the window? Maybe you do have to kind of shift things around a little bit so that maybe your workout's the first thing that you do, and maybe it's shorter than you normally would do, but you're moving it so that you're not ignoring it, and then it's done. So I think, yeah, I, I think bringing some awareness is kind of that first step. And then after that awareness, you can start to troubleshoot like what your next move is to remedy the problem.
To Curtis's point, my worry is that he really is in survival mode and he's really struggling to thrive right now because he mentioned a number of different things. He feels like he has a lot of negative stressors. He needs to cope. He needs motivation, all these things. I feel like what I would recommend for him, again, to tie a bow on it before we move on, is probably my first thing would be to better identify, to get better in tune with how you're feeling in your life. Maybe try some journaling. The other thing too is that if you're constantly in this high stress mode, doing things that kind of they calm you down. They talk about how journaling is effective with processing your feelings. I wasn't even just talking about it from that standpoint. I was talking about just figure out what the hell actually is stressing you out in your life. The other thing too is that identifying some motivation, maybe talk with your spouse, maybe talk with some friends, get out. We are exiting a pretty challenging period in all of our lives who we were very used to routines, and now all of a sudden we've been thrown out of routines for the last few months. So it's okay to like need a shakeup, or it's okay to feel lost here. So maybe think about starting to go on some walks, which has also been shown to effectively decrease stress. Breathing through your nose, not breathing through your mouth. Maybe start with that on your commute home or your commute to work. Maybe try to focus just on breathing through your nose. Also, intimacy with your spouse, that can be really effective if you have a spouse, and potentially you can work something out where you can spend more time together. I'm sure it's been really hard to have any intimate time with your spouses because you guys have been together with your kids so much more. So if you have kids, that is, because everybody's home, is my point. So these are all things I would recommend to Curtis to maybe first trying to better get a hold of your routine, and then try to do some of these things to just try to bring your levels down a little bit, get back to normal like Alex talked about last week. And as you start to get a better hold on how you're feeling, hopefully you don't have these cravings and things like that. And the final point is that maybe with some of that comfort eating, a function of that, you're in this high stress, so your energy level, you are using more energy. So it's not the eating isn't the problem, it's what you're eating. Like, because you are using more energy, because you are more stressed, and we know, as I said in the article, that being stressed is just another way of saying your body is using energy. So by maybe coming to terms with that might be an effective way to move past that. So moving on with the article, I go, and that's pretty much like the physical part. And then I mentioned briefly about the mental stress and how we need to utilize mental stress in order to learn new things and advance personally, and how you need to not be afraid to challenge yourself in that way because of how effective it is whenever you are stressing yourself from that mental state. So one thing that I also talk about is learn how to turn off and on, which actually is applicable to Curtis's point about maybe Curtis has a really stressful job, so he kind of has to be in that sympathetic ramp on kind of flight or flight mode, but then he can't turn it off. So he just feels like he's in this never ending cycle. So that's especially would be useful for him to learn how to kind of shut things down and try to calm down a little bit more. So,
Well, and it's worth noting that, physical stress and mental stress, there are hormones involved. So even though it feels like, you it's happening to you, there are, when we talk about ways to manage stress, I mean, scientifically, they're turning off these hormones. So even if you feel that lack of control, um, by doing these things, whether you think or believe or understand that it works, it still will work, right? So the deep breathing, will turn down those hormones and sort of shift your nervous system into this opposite or more relaxation kind of response. So with food specifically, that helps bring like food cravings down. It improves your digestion, so you're using what you're eating a little bit better. So deep breathing, we mentioned, is probably like one of the easiest free things you can do, and you can do it anywhere at any time without anyone noticing, right? So like meditating, people think like, oh, you have to be in a dark room or somewhere, but literally, half of the benefit of that is the breathing, and you can do it anywhere. So even taking a couple deep breaths even before you make whatever decision it is to skip your workout or eat junk food or whatever, that is a really good way to sort of outsmart the body and just turn down that stress response.
And it's interesting because our next comment from Mike I, he actually flips that because he says stress. A lot was said about this topic, all great ideas. In my opinion, if you have a healthy body, you have a healthy mind. Learn to take care of your body as working out relieves some of the stress. Also, find a job where you have quote unquote good mental stress. A job shouldn't be something you dread on Mondays and feel relieved about on Fridays. Besides exercising and meditating, what are some other good stress relievers or ways to manage stress? So, Alex, anything come to mind?
Yeah, I think a few things. I'm going to bring it back to exercise for a second to bring up a point, but then I'll come back to his other strategies. I think as someone builds up, like so many of the listeners, your jobs as first responders, as tactical athletes, it's a very responsive job. It's not only active, but you are responding to a situation as well. And I think it's really important when you are designing your workouts and your training. And if you've built a level and a foundation of, um, fitness, that it is important that we also prepare you for your job. So if there are certain things that you are required to do in your job that are stressful because they are physically demanding and difficult for you to perform, we need to make sure that your workout routine prepares you for that demanding task. Because if then your body is more physically prepared, your stress response isn't going to be hopefully quite as high because the physical stress response you are more prepared for. So then maybe you are more capable of handling the mental stress response because you're not trying to handle both. Or as I'm working with an athlete and we're building up their reactive, maybe we're incorporating reactive training into their program where they have to respond to something that I give them or do, or we'll include a mental exercise during their physical exercise to kind of prepare them better for these different situations. Again, it's taking something that maybe we struggled with that was a negative stress. You now are taking control of it because when you get in that situation, you have to carry something heavy while you're running. You're like, oh, I've done this in the gym before. I'm familiar with it. It is not this exact situation, but I know I'm capable of some of it. So I think it's really important as you build up, what are the things you struggle with in your job? What are the physical stressors that you have, and some of the mental ones, the situations, and how can we incorporate that into your training a little bit so you feel like you have some control? So I think that's a very valuable piece in taking control of some stress is, again, learning what your stressors are, and then how can we give you a tool set and a skill set to be in charge of it.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, Alex. I think that is a good point, and not only that, but then also that we can flip that and we can take some of that stress, that mental stress, and then we can train with it, kind of like how you had mentioned, but now expand it so that not only is it a portion of maybe your workout, but maybe one of your workouts during the week you dedicate almost the entire thing to decision making under stress. So Mike mentions about if you have a healthy mind, if you have a healthy body, you have a healthy mind. clearly he's showing his bias, I mean, which is fine and great for him, about how he relies on physical activity to keep himself at a homeostatic level mentally. Not only is he able to do that, but I mean, that's great for him. But the one counterpoint is he talks about you need to find a job where you have good mental stress. Well, some people may not have, well,
That
first of all,
luxury. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. You might not be able to switch your job right away, or B, you might have a calling to a job that has a lot of mental stress. So the point more so is learning how to control or how to manage bad mental stress. So Mike here, he probably has a job where there probably is negative mental stress, but whether it's through his healthy body approach, meaning exercise, or other kinds of things, that maybe what he is able to do is he's able to process that negative stress so as it isn't building up like it does for Curtis.
I think too, also like recognizing environments sometimes too, like maybe you're a great mover in the gym and it's not so much the activity itself that you have issues with, but maybe it's once your vision's taken away and you can't see what's going on. Like maybe we need to do things where your eyes are closed or you're working out with a lot of loud noises and then we shut it off and it goes silent and we change the environment or the surface. Or you mentioned you did barefoot running. There's so many different inputs when you change a piece of the environment as well, because I think we're very reactive to our environment. So maybe it's when you're loaded up in your equipment, you're sweating, you're super hot, and your decision making goes down because maybe your body temperature regulation is off, and that's not how you train in the gym. So you're not used to that. So maybe we have to put you in some of your equipment while you're training, or we have to put you in darker situations or more reactive situations to kind of bring out some of those as well. So again, it's like being in tune with maybe it's not always just the physical component of I'm in great shape or I'm in bad shape and wherever we are in that spectrum, but also then how we are in our environment. Like I'm kind of afraid of the dark. I won't lie. I don't love it. So I think it would benefit me to be in situations. I'm definitely more tense when I run at night. So like you know, safely maybe I do exercises in the dark, move around in my house where I'm safe in this environment and I know and I'm familiar with it, that I do some things at night so I can recognize, like, okay, I'm all right. Like, this situation isn't going to set me off quite as much. And I think you can get a lot of control out of that.
Yeah, I think those are great points. I do think healthy body, healthy mind. I mean, I agree with that, and I think you're right. I mean, it sounds like someone who uses taking care of themselves as a stress reliever, like exercise or whatever. And I also just think about like the gut brain connection, how you don't think really of food as contributing maybe to your mental stress, but your food will support a healthy gut, or it can go in the other direction, and that can certainly contribute to cognitive function and mental stress.
Yeah, and so I think to wrap a bow on this discussion, well, the first thing is, before we do that, Lindsay, do you know what flow state is? Are you familiar
I
with
mean,
that?
I don't know the formal definition, but I know the concept.
Um, because I was just wondering if, like, it's like, for people who don't know, flow state is like that feeling that you get where time kind of stops and you're so concentrated either on work or whatnot. Or I know I feel this whenever I'm presenting in public, and afterwards, like, you have dry mouth, you're kind of tired, even though you haven't been doing anything physical. You've been so concentrated on what you've been doing that it feels like kind of draining. So I just think about that with him talking about like good mental stress. And so I was wondering if you had any insight at all.
Yeah, I mean, I have to imagine it's the type of thing where you're I mean, I've had this experience before, I guess, now that I think about it. Um, and I think it's kind of like recovery from like an event where you're like trying to like rehydrate and kind of get yourself back. Most people are not, you're not eating during that time period because it's not occurring to you. It's not like something
Hmm.
that you need to do. I think we get into those states when you're doing um, activities that you either are really interested in or like you have to be like physically and mentally like 100% present. So you can't be thinking about anything else like food or water.
I just think about, well, like I remember the guy um, who came up with, or at least who I first heard it from. Yeah, David Asprey, who came up with bulletproof coffee, and I
Mm-hmm.
know he talked a lot about medium chain,
Triglycerides.
yeah, medium chain triglycerides, and like all these like fatty acids for your brain, like coming out of flow state, and you know,
Yeah, I mean,
is there
so
anything to that?
medium chain triglycerides, they bypass some of our normal digestion. So essentially, they go right into the bloodstream and they're used as fuel for the brain. So it's kind of like a sugar high without the crash, is what
Mm,
a lot of people use to describe it. So, I guess it makes sense if you're using your brain a lot in that situation that um, using MCT oil can be useful in just supporting like good cognitive functioning, like during that time period.
I
okay.
think too it could be like a change of input, like we talked about last week. Because again, so much of the demands of our flow state might not be super physically demanding. So maybe it's just change your sensory inputs. And so it's like once you take that drink of water, like swish it in your mouth, feel the temperature, let yourself swallow it. Maybe you pinch your shoulder blades, take your deep breaths, like change something in your environment so it just brings your attention out of you and into the world and kind of reorients you that way. Like you might find your different things to re-enter you out of flow state.
So I
Yeah, it is
feel
like
like,
a stream of consciousness kind of. It's like a separate, right? It's like not yeah, it's an interesting. And we've all had the experience where like time like you just aren't thinking about it because you're so focused. The funniest thing, Dave Asprey. So when I was teaching a nutrition class, probably like I want to say maybe like 8 years ago, it was an undergraduate nutrition course, and someone asked me about putting butter in coffee, and I thought this kid is nuts. Like, what is he
mhm,
talking about? And it is so big now, and
yeah,
there's actually there and we can talk about this maybe on another like a healthy fats type of episode or something, but his concept of fasting and having these healthy fats in the morning and not eating and your body's running on fat instead of sugar, so actually you have more energy even though you haven't eaten anything. I mean, there's research there, it's really fascinating, but I
yeah.
remember sort of not brushing this student aside but just thinking like uh this question is ridiculous. Like, no, don't put butter in your coffee.
Yeah, right?
And now I know, like, before I answer, I really do need to like read a little bit and see, if there's anything there. And in this case, there's actually, quite a bit there.
Well, and I think it's also like taking things to the next level because the benefits of fats, there is, pretty substantial data to it now. And ketosis, is been long understood for a long time. And so you're putting all these concepts together, you know. I just
Yeah,
find it, I just find it interesting that we have already, this is only episode 3, and we already have a poop show that we have to do, and
we
now
have
we
to do
have
a fat show.
a fat show. Yeah, exactly. So, I was gonna say flow state show, but I guess fat show that works too. So, or maybe we'll
I
do
think
all three.
I think if we had a podcast entitled "The Fat Show," we would get a lot of interested people listening.
For sure. Absolutely. I'm totally down for that. So, so then just at the end here, we'll wrap it up here with I wrote this in the article, but I said stress is a tool, respect it, learn to control it, use it to your advantage. Don't allow, this is a lot of what I will be talking about in the recovery section, especially once we get to mental skills, is do not allow your emotions to control your thoughts, or in this instance, do not allow stress to control your life. So it's okay to react to it sometimes, but don't let it run away from you. And then I think it's just important to remember, just to close the article out, is that stress is a requirement in order to make improvements. It's non-negotiable. So the longer you delay the development of a healthy relationship with stress, the longer it'll be for you to actually meet your goals, whatever those goals are. So, so with that being said, Alex, any concluders?
No, I think you captured it perfectly. I think learn to develop your relationship with it and appreciate that we need it, but you can use it to grow.
And Lindsay?
Yeah, I think as with all our topics, it's a type of thing where, it's going to ebb and flow. Sometimes you're going to feel like you can manage it, and other times you're going to have to check back in and see what you need to tweak to get back on track, so that it's not, controlling your life. But it's something I think we all need to work at.
So then I guess that's it for this episode. I want to thank all of you for listening. And just remember that if you want to become a part of the team, you can sign up at advancingathletics.com, and becoming a member, not only will you be able to submit your questions to the show, but then also you'll have access to us. So we have a lot of other perks on there, and we'd love to have you as part of our FMR family. So, and even if you just want to listen right now, we'd really appreciate you subscribing and sharing and all that other kind of stuff. Thank you very much for listening, and as always, don't forget to pay yourself. Goodbye for now. Okay, you guys aren't saying bye. That's fine.
All right. Bye.
No, it's all right. It's gone. The moment's gone now. So, okay. The Fuel, Move, Recover podcast is a product of Advancing Athletics, LLC. You can follow us on Instagram at Fuel, Move, Recover and Facebook at Advancing Athletics. This podcast is funded by our members at fuelmoverecover.com. Their membership is matched with free seminars on performance and wellness for underserved municipalities in Ohio and beyond. Come join the FMR family to improve your well-being while supporting others. The following departments and charities are the shout-outs of our patrons with Protect and Serve memberships: the Gary Sinise Foundation, the Stark County Sheriff's Office, the Task Force Dagger Foundation, Veterans Outdoor Foundation, and the Woonsocket, Rhode Island Police Department.